So in today's video, I'm going to be continuing to talk about Brazil in relation to migration, but I'm going to be looking at interdependence with the other countries which it shares migration flows for. This is for that EDC case study for the OCR A-level geography spec. I've highlighted the point here, and the key area I'm going to focus on is this idea of interdependence. So interdependence, essentially, it can relate to lots of different things. I'm going to give it a geographic context, but an interdependence can mean a mutual relationship in which people or places rely on each other. So people are dependent on each other. An example I've used here is the interdependence between teachers and students. So teachers, they rely on students to actually have a student to be able to teach, otherwise you can't be a teacher. But students, they rely on teachers more obviously perhaps to give them some knowledge. There is this relationship, and therefore both groups can affect each other. So for example, if a teacher doesn't make very good lessons, then the students obviously won't get very good knowledge. So we can see that there is a relationship between these. They rely on each other for different things, but also that they can affect each other. And this doesn't just relate to people, but also is reflected in countries on a global scale. So as the world becomes increasingly globalized, those connections between countries and relying on each other become really, really, really important. I've given an example here of Brazil and Portugal. Portugal could rely on Brazil to provide labour in the form of migrants to help run its economy. But equally, Brazil relies on that money sent back from migrants in the form of remittances to fund its entire economy. We can see, therefore, there is a mutual relationship where they're relying on each other for different things, and they can therefore affect each other. So I'm going to talk about this now in actual examples relating to the Brazil case study, starting with Portugal. So there is a long relationship between Brazil and Portugal. This is because Brazil is a former colony of Portugal. The Portuguese arrived in the 15th century, and we've seen a long-term migration. So Portuguese did migrate in quite large numbers in the 19th century, and therefore this relationship has been established over a long period of time. One of the ways that the relationship exists is if you're a Brazilian migrant and you go to Portugal, you actually have special status. That means that they have very, very similar rights in terms of voting, but also kind of rights of residence and to have like a national identity card. That means it's much easier for them to be able to integrate into Portuguese society. The same happens for anybody from Portugal who migrates to Brazil and lives in Brazil. Exactly the same kind of status. So they have special kind of conditions for that particular group of migrants. They also share a similar language, as in they both speak Portuguese, and like I said before, there are these long established links, ancestry and culture and family over a long period of time, which means that it's really easy for migrants from those countries to go to each other's countries and integrate into communities without causing lots of tension. They can get jobs quite easily. They find established groups there that they can connect with. So we see this connection between Brazil and Portugal is really, really strong. For lots of economic migrants from Brazil, they can go to Portugal because they know they're going to get higher wages than the Brazilian economy, but also it can act as a gateway to the EU. That means they could start off in employment in Portugal and then hopefully turn that into maybe opportunities in other countries within the EU region. As I said before, there's some really well-established diaspora networks that have happened over kind of generations and generations, and so migration happens both ways. Brazilians going to Portugal, Portuguese people going to Brazil. And because of that, not just people going, but money's being transferred by people making them in the other country. And these are really important for the families back in the source country for development on a very localised level. So we see in that last case example that there is kind of social but also economic interdependence between the two countries. And now I'm going to look at the interdependence between Brazil and the USA. So one way that there is economic interdependence is that there's lots of low-skilled economic migrants from Brazil. They go to America and they can get higher wages by essentially doing the same jobs that they do back in Brazil, and then they can send significant remittances back to Brazil, which helps the Brazil economy. Also, as they go, when they eventually end up coming back, so they're return migrants, they bring back with them social remittances. So they might have picked up skills or knowledge or new ideas, and this again can help to develop the Brazil economy and maybe lead to kind of new advancements in different areas. America, obviously, in this time gets a benefit from it. It relies on the fact that it gets lots of labour that can help boost its economy. And then you get local multiplier effects where Brazilians are spending their money in America, and therefore that's helping businesses in the USA as well. It's not just low-skilled migrants, but we are seeing increasingly there are greater opportunities for high-skilled Brazilians to go to the US in areas like teaching, in the service industries and management. And especially there's a really strong link with education. So they've actually started to form legal agreements between the two countries, political agreements. So that's where we're seeing not just economic interdependence, but a political independence. An example here I've said is there's over 40,000 teachers and students from Brazil that go on language exchanges to the USA, and some people go back the other way, showing that there is a really close connection in terms of economics and social independence there, and that's been formalised in a political agreement. It's not the only political agreement that's been made, and actually there are increasing connections politically between USA and Brazil. So other areas, they're actually sharing military information, and they're getting Brazilian and American private companies to develop defence technology together. Another thing in education, they're getting American teachers to help with the training of Brazilian teachers, especially in English language, and they're doing swaps there. So American teachers go to Brazil, but also Brazilian teachers and professors come to America, and they help train each other and improve their skills. And the other way is environmental. So there's the American government are trying to help make the Brazilians prevent fires and improve their forest management. And I'm going to give a very specific example in a second. That specific example I'm talking about is a part of the US federal government called USA. They help actually communities with training and advice and finance. So this is a relationship between Brazil and USA. And the USA, they go into the communities. An example of one thing they've done, if they've actually helped some indigenous people how to prevent forest fires. That helps them economically, it helps their environment. And this has happened with the Savante indigenous group. But it's not just on a localized level that they're doing that. The USA are also talking and helping the Brazilian government to design better laws to make sure that the forestry practices are more sustainable, and therefore this will lead to the long-term economic growth of Brazil, but it also helps on a worldwide level, because if the Amazon rainforest is protected, that obviously has a big ecological impact on climate change for not just Brazil, but lots of other countries, including the USA, around the world. The last group I'm going to talk about is Brazil and Haiti. So we talked earlier on about the huge humanitarian crises that happened, but the Brazilian government actually helped people from Haiti by making it easier for them to obtain visas to migrate there. That was done through the National Immigration Council. They did this in response to those big humanitarian crises in 2010 and 2012. But also one of the other key reasons was they knew that Haitians were going to move, and they wanted to stop them from being trafficked. So they've made a political relationship with Haiti here to improve those migration flows, make them easier, and also avoid there kind of being issues that they have to deal with. Some of the reasons, obviously, we've talked about why Haitians would migrate to do with disasters, and after the 2010 and 2012 disasters, the amount of migrants rapidly did increase. In 2010, it was under 2,000 immigrants ending up in Brazil, Haitians ending up in Brazil. But by 2013, that's nearly 11,000. So that's quite a significant change. These weren't just all humanitarian migrants, people leaving because of the crisis there. It's also because Haiti is a very poor country, so there's extreme poverty, there's political instability, which means there's been human right abuses. So people were moving for better opportunities and a more politically stable environment in Brazil. Most of these Haitians are trying to end up in the southeast of Brazil, in this area called Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina. And they would be trying to work in low-skilled jobs in agriculture, especially corn production and factories. We can again say this is a relationship that helps Brazil because it fills in gaps in the labour sectors there, and therefore will grow the economy in the long term. But it also helps Haiti because Haiti, as I said, is one of the poorest countries in the world. So any of the money that those Haitians are making can be sent from Brazil back to Haiti, and it can actually help to improve Haiti over there. So we can see through this entire case studies lots of relationships, lots of reliances between the various countries that Brazil has migration flows with.